Imagine you're just opening a satellite map of the Earth. It's a normal day, a normal Google Earth. But suddenly, in the middle of the ocean, you notice a strange dark shape. At first, it looks like a reef or a cloud shadow. But when you zoom in, it becomes clear it's a huge ship. And the strangest thing is, it's been lying there for decades. SS City of Adelaide. Off the coast of Australia's magnetic island, near the city of Townsville, a dark, elongated silhouette is visible on satellite images. At first, it looks like a reef or a cloud shadow, but upon closer inspection, it becomes clear it's the hull of an old ship. Its name is the SS City of Adelaide. The vessel was built in Glasgow, Scotland, in 1863 at the J&G Thompson shipyard. The iron steamship carried passengers, coal, and mail between Australian ports and was considered a reliable workboat of its time. For decades, it sailed peacefully along coastal routes until technology began to rapidly change. By the early 20th century, the steamship was obsolete. It was removed from service and converted into a floating coal storage facility. Later, the owners decided to use the old hull in an unusual way, towing it to Magnetic Island and sinking it as a breakwater, intended to protect the shore from storm surges. In 1916, tugboats towed the ship across the strait, but the operation didn't go as planned. The hull unexpectedly ran aground in Cockle Bay and remained there. Over time, the metal began to rust and the decks deteriorated in the tropical sun. During World War II, the wreck was used as a training target for bombers. One of the planes struck the ship's mast during an attack and crashed into the water. Today, mangroves have grown around the hull, and from a satellite, it appears as a dark spot in the shallows. Local fishermen say that during storms, the water around the old ship behaves strangely, as if the current were bending around an invisible wall of the past. MV Captianes. MV Captianes lies in the mouth of Scotland's River Clyde, near the town of Greenock. If you look at satellite maps, you can see a massive hulk lying on its side in the water. Locals call it the Sugar Boat. In January 1970, the Greek cargo ship was anchored in thick fog. The night was calm, but visibility was near zero. At some point, the tanker British Light emerged from the fog. The crews spotted each other too late. The tanker crashed into the cargo ship's side, severely ripping its hull. The captain of the Captianes decided to run the ship aground to save the crew. But inside the holds were thousands of tons of sugar. As seawater began to fill the compartments, the sugar dissolved and turned into a thick, heavy mass. The center of gravity shifted, and the ship slowly capsized. Salvage crews managed to rescue the crew, but the ship itself remained in the shallow water. More than 50 years have passed, and the enormous hull is still visible from satellite images. During storms, waves pass through the empty holds, and the metal emits a dull rumble. Fishermen sometimes say the sound can be heard even from the shore at night. MV Plassey. Off the coast of the Irish island of Inis lies a ship that has become a true symbol of the area. Satellite images reveal its rusty hull, right on the rocks off the shore. This is the cargo vessel MV Plassey. In March 1960, the ship was caught in a violent storm. Winds reached near hurricane force, and the waves tossed the vessel like a toy. The captain tried to maintain course, but the current gradually carried the ship toward the island's rocks. Soon, the hull struck the rocks, trapping the crew. A distress signal was received on the mainland, and a rescue operation began almost immediately. But approaching the shore by boat was impossible due to the waves. Rescuers then decided to use a helicopter. One by one, the sailors were lifted from the deck and brought ashore. None of the crew was killed, but the ship itself was beyond rescue. Attempts were made to free it from the reefs, but the storms completely destroyed the hull. Today, the rusty hulk lies on the beach, constantly buffeted by the Atlantic winds. When a storm hits, the waves crash into the empty holds, and the sound echoes throughout the island. The Shale Scaw. Near Niagara Falls lies one of North America's strangest shipwrecks. Satellite images reveal a small, rusty hulk lying on the rocks near the edge of the raging river. This is the barge Shale Scaw. In 1931, the barge was used to transport shale along the Niagara River. It was traveling upstream when the tow rope suddenly snapped. The powerful current caught the barge and began to carry it rapidly downstream. The crew realized they were facing one of the most powerful waterfalls in the world. They managed to abandon ship and make their way to shore. The barge itself continued downstream until it washed up on the rocks just a few hundred meters from the falls. There it remains. Almost 100 years have passed. The metal is covered in rust, and part of the hull has already disintegrated. But the barge is still clearly visible from satellite images. The constant roar of water can be heard around it. Sometimes it seems as if the current is slowly trying to reach the old ship and drag it down. SS Benwood. The cargo ship SS Benwood lies on the seabed off the coast of Florida, near Key Largo. Today, it can be seen on underwater maps and satellite images of the shallows. The ship sank during World War II. In April 1942, the Benwood was sailing at night without navigation lights. During those months, German U-boats were actively attacking shipping off the U.S. coast, so ships tried to conceal their position. But this is precisely what led to tragedy. In the dark, the Benwood collided with another cargo ship. The impact was so powerful that it tore a huge hole in the hull. Water quickly began filling the holds. The crew managed to abandon ship, and the Benwood itself slowly sank to the bottom. The depth here is only about 15 meters, so today it is often visited by divers. Inside the holds lie fragments of machinery and rusty beams. When the water is murky and sunlight barely penetrates, the enormous metal structures appear as dark silhouettes receding into the depths. USS Utah. In the calm waters of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, lies a huge, overturned ship hulk. From a satellite view, it appears as a long, dark shadow beneath the surface. This is the battleship USS Utah, one of the ships lost during one of the most famous attacks of World War II. The ship was launched in 1909. For many years, it served in the U.S. Navy, participating in exercises and escorting the fleet on long cruises. Over time, the battleship became obsolete and was converted into a training ship for sailors. The morning of December 7th, 1941, began calmly. But soon Japanese planes appeared over Pearl Harbor. The attack began suddenly. Torpedoes and bombs rained down on the ships moored in the harbor. Utah was hit several times almost immediately. Water began to quickly fill its compartments. The ship began to list and then capsize. It all happened in just a few minutes. 58 sailors died inside the hull. After the war, many ships were raised from the seabed, but Utah was left in place as a war grave. Today, a memorial has been erected nearby. Occasionally, thin slicks of fuel appear on the surface of the water. Sailors say these are oil residues from old tanks, slowly seeping out over the decades. And when you look at the ship's dark silhouette from a satellite, you get a strange feeling, as if time stood still there at the very moment of the attack. SS Maheno. On the long sandy beach of Fraser Island in Australia lies a huge, rusting ship hulk. It can even be seen on satellite images. This is the SS Maheno, once one of the most luxurious passenger liners of its time. The ship was built in 1905 in Scotland. It sailed between Australia and New Zealand and was considered one of the fastest vessels on these routes. It featured electric lighting, spacious cabins, and even music room. But 30 years later, the liner was decommissioned. It was sold to a Japanese company for scrap. In 1935, the ship was towed across the ocean. During a powerful typhoon, the tow line snapped, leaving the enormous liner stranded out in the open ocean. For several days, it drifted amid stormy waves. Eventually, the current carried the ship to the shore of Fraser Island. The waves washed it onto the sand. Attempts to refloat the ship were unsuccessful. Over time, storms began to erode the hull. During World War II, the Australian military used it as a target practice. Today, only a rusty skeleton remains of the luxury liner. But even now, its size is impressive. When a storm hits, the wind rushes through the empty windows and ruined decks, creating a strange hum that can be heard for hundreds of meters. SS Palo Alto. Off the California coast, near the town of Aptos, an unusual ship rests in the ocean. From a satellite, its hull appears as a long gray line extending into the water. This is the SS Palo Alto, one of the strangest ships in history. This ship was built during World War I. At the time, the United States experienced a severe steel shortage. So, engineers decided to experiment and began building ships out of reinforced concrete. The Palo Alto was one such project. Its enormous hull was composed entirely of concrete, reinforced with metal reinforcement. The ship was launched, but the war ended before it could begin full service. Later, the ship was sold to a private company. It was towed to the California coast and converted into an unusual entertainment venue. A restaurant, a dance hall, and even a swimming pool were opened on board. But the ocean proved stronger. Storms gradually eroded the concrete structures. A few years later, the ship was closed. Today, it sits in the water, an abandoned monument to a strange engineering era. Waves pass through cracks in the hull, and seabirds nest on the ruined decks. At times, this concrete ship seems more like the ruins of an ancient building than a vessel. SS Francisco Morazan. In Lake Michigan, near South Manitou Island, you can see a huge ship seemingly stuck on a reef. Its hull is even visible on satellite maps. This is the cargo ship SS Francisco Morazan. The ship was built in 1922 and transported grain, coal, and other cargo across the Great Lakes. In November 1960, the ship was caught in a heavy snowfall. Visibility was near zero. The wind whipped up high waves, and shore lights barely pierced the snow. The captain tried to maintain course, but navigation became increasingly difficult. At one point, the ship struck a reef near the island. The impact was severe. The ship stopped and was unable to budge. The Coast Guard evacuated the crew. No one was killed, but the ship remained on the reef. Attempts to free it from the rocks proved too costly. Over time, the hull began to rust, and storms gradually eroded the decks. Today, the ship sits in the middle of the lake like a huge, rusty tower. In foggy weather, its silhouette suddenly emerges from the gray water, looking almost ghostly. MS World Discoverer. One of the most famous ghost ships of modern times lies off the coast of the Solomon Islands. From satellite images, a massive liner can be seen listing near the shore. This is the cruise ship MS World Discoverer. The ship was built in Germany in 1974. It was specifically designed for expedition voyages. The liner sailed to Antarctica, the Arctic, and remote islands of the Pacific Ocean. In April 2000, the ship was cruising the Solomon Islands. In a narrow strait, the vessel struck an underwater reef. The impact damaged the hull, and water began to enter. The captain quickly realized the ship was in danger of sinking. He decided to steer the liner toward the nearest bay and run it aground. All passengers were evacuated. Rescue vessels took them to the islands, but the ship itself remained in the bay. Over time, its decks began to deteriorate. The windows shattered, and birds and bats took up residence inside. Today, the enormous liner sits at the shore, listing to one side. Jungle is gradually encroaching on the hull, and rust is covering the metal. And when you look at this ship from a satellite, it's hard to believe that it was once a luxury vessel, cruising the most remote corners of the planet.